Tim White wrote a book, and it's a doozy, and he's here to talk about it.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
How are you? If you're seeing the original broadcast here on August 15, 2016, I'm back from vacation. I get emails from people, how dare you go on vacation? What? It's just Trump every day anyway. What's the difference? But seriously, there's a lot of things going on in our community. Terrific. The Warwick North Little League team is representing Rhode Island for the third year in a row. There's all sorts of things that are happening on a local level that are worthy of a rundown, but I'm really excited about listening to Tim's story about his story, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. It's also a good chance for us, for those of you who are seeing this not on August 15th, to revisit this conversation, because it's the kind of show that we will, when I take another day off or a holiday comes, run the program and hopefully sell some books for what is the top-level journalist that we have here in the community, Tim White. You know him from all this Target 12 work. It's in the lineage. He'll talk about his dad here a little bit. With no further ado, here's the look of the book, The Last Good Heist. And this fascination with organized crime is something that America needs a shrink over. It's you can't stop watching movies. You can't stop reading books about this thing.
Boy, I hope you're right.
Right?
Yes.
From my lips to God's ears to the
to Hollywood's ears, maybe?
to the Amazon.com click here to purchase site. And please do, Amazon.com.
Yes,
How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm good, and I'm glad that I'm getting the relaxed Dan York, because by Wednesday the wheels are going to start coming off this thing, and I feel bad for whoever's going to be sitting here.
Oh, it's so funny. You know what? Here's the admission. Here's the deal I'm making with Tim. Because I've been on a break and just logistics, I didn't get a chance I have not read the book. So we're going to hear all about the book, and then I'm going to read the book, and then I'm going to have him back, because I know I'm going to have 50 more questions about the book. That's
I like
deal,
this
right?
deal.
That's a good deal.
That's a great
deal.
That's
nothing but upside for you, I hope.
Yeah. We'll see how this goes.
The Last Good Heist. What was it?
So
1974.
1975.
Five.
And actually, I know some people are going to be possibly watching this as a replay, but for the day we're taping this, yesterday was the 41st anniversary of this heist, and it's one of the largest heists in U.S. history that not a lot of people know about. People who grew up in Rhode Island, remember it as the Bonded Vault heist, because it was the largest and most expensive trial in Rhode Island history, and I believe that still holds true. Maybe 38 Studios will change that. But what happened was, in 1975, really hot day in August, 8 daring thieves broke into a secret bank used by mobsters and their associates. And this is where wise guys hid all their ill-gotten gains. It was a room of 150 safe deposit boxes. They got into 148 of them. And we're not talking about the small ones that you see at Citizens Bank. They were 2 foot by 2 foot, stuffed with, not joking, high-end jewelry, silver bars, gold coins, and cash. So much so that they couldn't take all of it. And let me just be clear, this was not Ocean's 11. Okay, these guys were, in many ways, it's shocking that they actually pulled off this heist, because there was a lot of mistakes along the way, but they did it. And our estimates are, at the time when it happened, the estimates were $4 million, and that was I believe the second largest heist even at the time. But the problem with that is calculating it, because when the bad guys had their loot stolen, they couldn't go to the cops and say, hey, all that stuff we had stolen? Well, some guy just robbed it from me. They'd have tax problems, of course they'd go to jail. So time has a funny way of letting the truth out. FBI files have been unsealed. FBI agents who wouldn't talk then talk now. We have, my co-authors and I, Randy Richard and Wayne Worcester, have put the estimate around $30 to $32 million in loot. That's $140 million in today's figures if you were to recalculate. Really only the Gardner Museum heist in this area, which is $500 million, a huge one, comes close to that.
Cash or cash in
loot and
this product value?
That's right, which had
things like?
Things, well, so a lot of your viewers will remember that at the time, Providence was the jewelry capital of the country. And there was a lot of manufacturing here. We hosted a lot of jewelry conferences, and those poor guys would get robbed blind. So there was crowns, there was
The
necklaces.
vendors would get robbed.
The vendors would get robbed.
How?
Oh, they get, their cars would get broken into, they'd get held up, give me all your loot kind of a thing. And this is where those ill-gotten gains would go. There's a twist to this heist, because I think what you have to keep in mind is in 1975, organized crime was enormously powerful. It acted as a secondary government here. And it was run by Raymond L.S. Patriarca, the mob boss and the patriarch of what is known as the Patriarca crime family. It doesn't matter who the boss is now, it's always called the Patriarca crime family. So what we talk about in the book is this heist happened because he okayed it. He okayed to have his own men robbed from. And the reason he did that was when he was away in federal prison in Atlanta, serving time for a gangland slaying there, he didn't feel his soldiers were paying their due. And so he authorized this robbery to happen. And as a matter of fact, his son, Raymond Jr. Patriarca, as the lead gunman, revealed in testimony and interviews and whatnot, his son emptied out his safe deposit box the night before the actual heist went down. So we think it's an important part of Rhode Island history, warts and all, and had a huge impact on organized crime in terms of its downfall. No one's going to argue that the RICO statute didn't have more of an impact, but the La Cosa Nostra is built on trust, right, Dan? I mean, it's the family, the family sense of things and order. This eroded that trust.
So, and again, I'm at a slight disadvantage, but when I read it all, the questions will be better. So, does Raymond Sr. conjure it up, or does he authorize it?
Yep, it's an important distinction.
So they reach him in jail and get approval?
So the way it is explained through the lead gunman is...
and the lead gunman is?
Robert Deuce Dussault. He's a guy from Lowell, Massachusetts.
Right.
And he's the guy that went first into the Hudson First Storage Building. And what I didn't say is the robbery took place. It's the most Providence thing ever. It's a building built to maintain furs during the summer and to repair them and also to sell them. But in the middle was the
Hold your thought. This guy's a character. Kev, can we throw our first piece of tape of Mr. Dussault, just to give you a flavor of who this guy is? No, the sound, please. Can we take a look at this?
He has been relocated. He's in the Federal Witness Protection Program. You'll probably touch on that somewhat. We have two United States Marshals here with him, and I want to publicly thank him here in front of you men for coming here. I think it's the first time I know this has been done in the state of Rhode Island. I can't remember any place else that's been done, and I want to thank you, Bob, for coming and do it for us. And I'm going to give you the microphone now. You just do your thing.
Hello. Whatever. I don't hear no echo.
No, you're speaking into the camera.
All right. I've never done this like the Colonel just said. And thank you for the introduction, Anthony. And I guess I got to start from the beginning.
That is a training tape?
Yeah, that's Robert Dussault, the guy with the white T-shirt on, the sunglasses, smoking the cigarette. And the man to his right who started that was the former colonel of the Providence Police, Anthony Mancuso. And it was a tape used solely for internal training at the Providence Police Department that we got. Like, remember I said time has a funny way of unsealing things. We got our hands on that tape. And it's 2 hours of Robert Dussault talking about how they pulled off this heist. At the time that he recorded that, and I think it was 1978, he was in the Federal Witness Protection Program. And he was in the Federal Witness Protection Program because there was a hit taken out on his life by the mob. And so he decided that's probably a good time to become a government informant and live under their umbrella of their protection. And during that time, he went and recorded that video. It was key for Randy, Wayne, and I to get that.
So now going back, by the way, one of the questions I'm going to have, I might as well throw it in there. Follow along, folks. This had to be inspiring in terms of material to write the book, this video. Did you write the book when you got this video, or have you always wanted to write the book about this story?
I've always wanted to write the book about the story, and in the reporting for the book, Randy, Wayne, and I uncovered that video.
And you went, bonus.
Oh man, to hear
Fertile ground.
Look, you can read a transcript
Right.
of an interview or of a court proceeding. To hear someone's cadence, to hear their voice.
No different. I mean, absolutely no comparison.
No, nothing. It's we knew the guy right then and there. And I should say, Randy Richard was, and we can get into this. My father's partner at the Providence Journal,
Right.
Jack White, my late father. He did interview DeSalt. Both Dad and Randy interviewed DeSalt, but that was back in the '70s.
So going back to the evolution of the story. So Raymond Sr. Authorizes this heist, but it came to him. He didn't recruit them, and so this is the lead gunman that you were beginning to talk about. Specifically, how did they decide A, that they wanted to rip this thing off, and B, how did they get sanction from the boss in jail?
According to DeSalt, that went through a faction of the Patriarcha family, the Wimets. So you had John Wimet, Gerard Wimet, one really scary guy. As a matter of fact, former U.S. Attorney, current U.S. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, put Gerard Wimet in prison for the rest of his life under the federal three strikes law. They were a very powerful faction in Rhode Island of organized crime. It was them that had, according to DeSalt, that had the idea to pull this thing off. They needed to get together a gang of gunmen, robbers. They did that, but these guys, a lot of them from Massachusetts, from Lowell, sort of splintered around. They were tissue to the organized crime family. They were disposable, if you get my drift on
Right.
that. And they got their cut of the immediate cash that day, but the real value of the loot, they never saw. That went back into the family, was fenced, was liquidated. The FBI believes it was liquidated according to the FBI files in Europe.
Okay, when we come back, I want to know who actually had rightful ownership, if that's actually a concept, of the loot. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. There is not nearly enough time in this show to cover this story, which is why you need to read the book, The Last Good Heist. Tim White, Randall Richard, and Wayne Worcester. It's Tim's big project here, and we'll talk about the legacy of his father and Tim, writing this book. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of gut check stuff that goes along with that. But the fascination I had is going into the break. So Raymond Sr. is in jail, and he's thinking that he's not getting his rightful dues, right? The money that's due to him as the
tribute is what they call it.
Right, the tribute is the crime boss. So he authorizes when it comes to him, but someone's got to let him know, hey, listen, we can hit this, for lack of a better term, mob condo bank, right? I mean, it's so. This is the place where we have a picture of this, don't we? Kev, see if you can just show the picture of the actual building where all this stuff was stored,
which still exists, by the way, at Cranston Street in Providence.
All right, so this is kind of like what? The bank of the mob, but everyone knows this is where this stuff is, all the stuff is being held. Doesn't Raymond get a piece as the stuff's going in and coming out?
Well, he's supposed to, right?
And he's thinking he's not.
And he's thinking he's not. And the thing about this building, again, it was mainly a first storage building. The underworld knew the bank existed, and it didn't have a sophisticated alarm system. It didn't need to, because who's dumb enough to rob from the mob? I mean, that is a death wish. That alone is a great alarm system.
So this Wimet group is also sniffing what? That the boss is getting ripped off, or they just saw an opportunity and
I
went
think
to
they
him?
saw an opportunity. They're not going to pull off a heist without the approval of the mob boss. You do that and you've reached too
So they
far.
factioned off. What percentage of the entire Patriarch organization was the Wimet group? I mean,
I don't know. They, you
big
have
piece?
different. They were big. Let's put it this way: they were big, according to law enforcement at the time. They were big earners. They ran extortion, bookmaking operations.
So they go in and they rob this joint, but they hired guns. And this guy.
Robert DeSalt.
DeSalt is a hired gun from Massachusetts.
Yep.
Is he part of the family prior to the actual heist?
No, as a matter of fact, he had severe distrust in La Cosa Nostra, in the Rhode Island Mafia. He had distrust of Rhode Island as a whole. What happened was he grew up with a guy named Chucky Flynn, really tough guy, Lowell, Massachusetts. Both Chucky, Dussault, they escape prison, and Chucky meets the Womettes in Rhode Island and reaches out to Dussault and says, "I need your help. This is going to be our last good heist. You know, Bobby, this is the one. This is the one that we can go straight. We can retire on this one," which is why we call the book The Last Good Heist.
Classic. You can't rob from thieves. I mean, thieves can't go to these, as you said at the beginning, you can't go run into the authorities over getting robbed from loot that you robbed.
That's right. Yeah, and that's
it's checkmate.
And as a matter of fact, the prosecutor, a guy named Al DeRobio, who later became the chief of district court, had trouble initially finding a victim on this because no one was going to come forward. In a roundabout way, they eventually did. But that's why the figure was so low. And $4 million isn't even low, especially in 1975 terms, but it was much lower than what the actual take was.
Show some photos. Well, let's go down our list and talk through some of these. So this is the gunman.
Yeah, that's Robert Dussault on the right, obviously, after he had decided to cooperate with the government, and that's a state police detective on the left giving a lie detector test at state police headquarters in Scituate.
Okay. And that's former chief, Barney Prignano, with a full head of hair, looking very good.
Yes.
1970s style.
Yeah, and he and a colleague are leading in a guy named Jake the Snake Tarzian into Superior Court. Tarzian was one of the robbers in the heist.
Okay. And there he is again.
There's Dussault, one of my favorite pictures of Dussault. That's a Providence Journal photo taken of him inside state police headquarters.
And
that's his mugshot. Now, I told you he had escaped from prison. He didn't escape from Walpole, but from a prison named Greenfield in western Massachusetts at the time. So he was on the lam when the heist was pulled off.
And we had a couple more here.
Okay, so what do bad guys...
And it ends beautifully.
Isn't that lovely? What do bad guys do when they come into a lot of money? They go to Vegas, and that's what Robert Dussault did, and he met a prostitute named Karen Sponheim, that's her on the left, and they hit it off. And she ended up traveling the country with him, and he continued to do what he did best, which was rob banks and coin shops and so on and so forth. He was so institutionalized, Karen had to drive the car. He didn't know how to drive. He spent so much time in prison that he never learned how to drive. She actually taught him on the road, which he would.
But I thought it was the last good heist that he wouldn't need to do anything like that anymore.
Well, true, but he
addicted to the activity, huh?
So he gets his cut of the cash like all the other guys, but that money runs out in Vegas, and so they go back to get the real money, the loot, the jewelry, the gold bars, the coins. Those are gone. One of the robbers was supposed to bury it, and they were going to fence it and liquidate it and get their cut. That was never going to happen. These guys were, like I told you before, they were tissue. They were disposable to the organized crime family.
Oh, it's just a fascinating story. The book is The Last Good Heist. When we come back, we'll ask him what it's like when he's running around chasing Target 12 victims out there. When has he got time to write a book? Stay with us.
I started when I was a young kid, a little suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. Broke into homes. The reason being, I didn't have no money. And I associated myself with a bunch of kids on the corner. I was only 11, 12 years old at the time. What led me to break into these houses? No one caring. Not enough activities in my neighborhood. Cop on a beat. Keep moving, kid. Keep moving, kid.
He's breaking my heart.
Yeah, I know. And he's the hero of the story, but he's a pretty bad guy, so it's hard.
Is he alive?
Well, we're pretty sure he's dead. We actually, oddly enough, I'll make this brief, got our hands on his burial video. He was in the Federal Witness Protection Program, and so when he died, the funeral home in Minnesota said they recorded it to prove to the government that he was dead, which is even a very odd thing. So we have that video. We put a picture of it in there. But there's a break in the tape right when they're lowering the casket into the ground.
Oh, my God.
So there's a little bit of us that's like, this is at the point where Robert Dussault would jump out. Just, again, the mob wanted him dead. So if they thought he was dead, that would be it. The reason we think he is gone is because after we did this, he would have come out of the woodwork looking for his cut.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of coming out for the woodwork, so you had a little book signing the other day.
Yes.
And who shows up? Check out.
Yeah, we had a surprise visitor. That is
one of the characters in the book.
That is one of I'll say alleged gunman because he was acquitted of the crime. His name is Jerry Tillinghast, and anyone who follows news at all here knows who that person is. A legendary tough guy in Rhode Island, connected to organized crime. Spent 33 years in prison for a gangland slaying.
Doing what now?
What is he doing now? Going to book signings, apparently, because he walked in and he politely declined. Very nice guy in person. He declined to be interviewed for the book. But here's a guy who has denied his role in one of the largest heists in U.S. history, but he shows up to the book signing. He wanted a signed copy of the book, so I obliged.
Your dad investigated this story.
Yes, he did.
So this has got a lot of meaning to you.
Yeah, I like to use this joke from time to time. Most kids get the story of Casey at bat. I got the story of Casey hit with a bat as a kid. All the organized crime stories I grew up with, this was my favorite. When Dad passed away in 2005, I was determined to see this through as a book. Always thought it would be a good book. Dad thought it would be a good book. So I teamed up with Randy Richard, who used to be Dad's partner at the Journal, and we got together with a great writer, Wayne Worcester, and those two have become fast friends. It took us 8 years to get this project through. All the reporting, trying to find a publisher, it takes a long time, and then you have a year to write it. And we had a blast working on it, and finally this August, we got it done, and the book is dedicated to Dad.
What's your mom think?
She cried. She cried quite a bit. And if you want to know a good story, if I have 1 minute,
Yeah.
If it weren't for Mom, book probably wouldn't have happened, and here's why. We wouldn't be able to tell the story if we didn't know what happened to Robert Dussault. He went in the witness protection program. I didn't know his name. My mom, after Dad died, brought up some boxes of Dad's from the basement, and he was a bit of a pack rat, thank God. And in it was an envelope, and it had nothing in the envelope, but it was addressed to Jack White in their home on the Cape, and a return address for Robert Dempsey in Colorado. All Dad ever told me was Robert Dussault went in the witness protection program and began working for the Coors Brewing Company, which is in Colorado. So I thought, is Robert Dempsey Robert Dussault? So that's what I used to request the FBI files. A year and a half later, 600 pages show up here at Channel 12 with his file. If Mom hadn't found that envelope with Robert Dempsey on it, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you right now. So she had a big role.
Unbelievable. I'm guessing your dad is enjoying the fruits of his and your labor and your mom's
Fine.
diligence.
Yes.
How much of this did you actually write?
Yeah, so Wayne Worcester was the primary writer. Randy and I would do a lot of the reporting and research. Wayne is a phenomenal writer. He'd write it, send it back to us. I say we tweak it, but we really didn't need to. Towards the end, as we approached the deadline, things being what they were, Randy and I had to pick up some of the writing towards the end there, but it's Wayne's voice. If you're laughing at the book, Wayne deserves the credit.
Last Good Heist, Amazon, where good books are sold. I'm going to read it, then we'll do chapter 2. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Dan.
Good luck.
All right.
Be right back. Again, if you're watching on Monday, August 15th, tomorrow, Mark Janess from the Naval War College will come up here on set and talk to us about everything that's going on. Donald Trump's got a new plan to save the country, defense, foreign affairs, terrorism. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about that and a whole lot more. Go get Tim's book, The Last Good Heist, Amazon.com. Good night.